Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited, The Man Crisis. Learn why so many men are struggling to find their way in an increasingly gynocentric world in The Man Crisis. Get your copy of The Man Crisis in paperback and Kindle Unlimited today.
I haven't been able to make any new videos this week because there have been repair people working inside of my bedroom/office, and I had to move furniture from one part of the space to the next. And the reason why I'm sitting close up on this chest of drawers you usually see in most of my videos is because that furniture has been moved up to the other part of the room. Now, I wanted to get a quick video out in order to discuss A Tale of Two Cities and show you the difference between male leadership and female leadership. And in Portland, Oregon, the mayor of Portland quickly shut down an effort by protesters of Black Lives Matter as related to the George Floyd murder in setting up some sort of empowerment zone similar to the Chaz empowerment zone set up in Seattle. Now, the reason why these protesters were able to set up a Chaz/CHOP empowerment zone in Seattle is primarily due to the female mayor of Seattle and the female police commissioner and police chief. And when I take a critical examination of the behaviors of that female mayor and female police chief, I see behaviors I talked about in detail in my book, The Man Crisis. Because when I look at the behavior of that female mayor and her female police commissioner, I see the same type of dysfunctional coping behaviors that single mothers participate in whenever their authority is challenged by an adolescent son who she can't control. And the protesters, as related to the murder of George Floyd, as I see it, have completely overwhelmed this mayor of Seattle and her police commissioner. And because they were overwhelmed by the emotions of these protesters, what happened was this female mayor of Seattle decided to withdraw all of the police officers from that precinct, and that was a coping behavior that oftentimes happens with single mothers I talk about in The Man Crisis as related to women completely shutting down. So this female mayor of Seattle, what she did was completely shut down that police precinct, pull out all of those officers because she had shut down completely mentally. And when women wind up overwhelmed by out of control boys, what happens is this is one of their coping mechanisms, shutting down. So what they do when they shut down is they just pull everything out as related to their interaction with that boy, and then what they do is tune out any negative information regarding their son's behavior. Anything said about this boy participating in out of control behavior goes in one ear and out the other. And with this female mayor of Seattle and her police chief, what they have done is gone and shut down, and they don't want to hear anything negative about this Chaz/CHOP empowerment zone that these protesters have set up in an effort to defy the mayor of Seattle's authority and this effort to push back on the boundaries established by the executive branch of the city of Seattle. So that's what's happened in the first stage of this female mayor's coping behaviors. She has shut down completely and allowed the chaos that these individuals have decided to set up in their Chaz empowerment fiefdom to go on in her city because she does not know how to deal with these protesters' out of control behavior. Now, in addition to shutting down, this mayor also went into another stage of behavior I talk about in the man crisis as related to single mothers whenever they have to deal with an out of control boy is she went into a state of denial. And many single mothers, whenever they have to deal with an adolescent boy who is pushing boundaries or challenging their authority, what they do is start to deny that their boy's behavior is changing and changing in ways that makes him completely out of control. And I see this with the female mayor of Seattle, and I see it with her police commissioner. They refuse to acknowledge that these protesters are changing from a peaceful protest to an attempt to try to establish their own order in their city, because that's what they were doing when they went and established this Chaz/CHOP empowerment zone. They went from following the laws of the land as related to the First Amendment, which gives us the right to peaceful protest and to challenge our government and actively participate in our government, to making an effort to establish their own country within the United States, because that's what those Chaz/CHOP empowerment types were trying to do with this Chaz/CHOP empowerment zone. They have gone from going out here to participate in a peaceful protest against the injustice perpetrated by the murder of George Floyd to going out here and participating in behaviors that show they really aren't about following the laws of the land. That what they want to do is overthrow the laws of the land and establish their own personal fiefdom. And the reaction from the female mayor of Seattle was to shut down and then deny that these protesters had gone from peaceful protest into all acts of sedition as related to the country. And again, this is just similar to what your single mother does whenever she is confronted by a boy who is now bigger than her, stronger than her, and can physically challenge her efforts to attempt to set boundaries for her. What this boy will do is then become too much of a threat to her, and as she shuts down mentally, she then starts denying as related to his out of control behavior. And that statement of denial was clearly shown to me when the mayor of Seattle talked about how these protesters were doing something good and how this would eventually turn into a summer of love. And that was a statement of denial, because we clearly see from the Chaz/CHOP protesters establishing their own fiefdom in her city. What's happening is the situation in Seattle is getting to become more and more out of control. And she keeps denying the problem because she doesn't want to deal with the problem, because she's overwhelmed by the emotions being expressed to her, and she's overwhelmed by the inability of her to go out here and assert authority. So what she does is try to put a positive spin on things to make herself feel better, the same way your single mother, when she goes out here and says her son would never hurt anybody. Now, that's some of the more troubling behaviors, because it shows you how out of control the woman is becoming as related to this situation in Seattle. She refuses to acknowledge the problem. All of the information she's hearing about people shaking down business owners and asking for protection, people stealing from other Chaz people, it shows that things are going in one ear and out of the other. And as the situation has escalated and we've had an individual get shot and another individual get murdered, she is just, again, shutting down, tuning out, and practically doing another one of the behaviors that I talk about in the Man Crisis, abandoning those 6 blocks of Seattle. Now, this is another coping mechanism that many single mothers participate in when their boys are changing into men and not fitting into their rose-colored world. And because those protesters aren't fitting into the rose-colored idea she had regarding this summer of love that she had tried to create as a delusion to deny the problems going on, what we have is her trying to walk away from that Chaz empowerment zone and the chaos that is growing in that area. And again, this is similar to just what these single mothers do when they're out here. They go out here and they can't deal with the son being out of control, so they want to abandon the boy. And what they will do when the boy is out of control is try to put the boy out of their house, or they will try to hand the boy off to the father because they cannot control the boy. And because they can't deal with him, what they will do is try to push the problem off on somebody else while they go out here and live their own life or live their best life. And these are the behaviors I'm seeing your mayor of Seattle and her police commissioner or police chief participating in. They're practically letting this Chaz or CHOP empowerment zone devolve into chaos because they just don't have the leadership skills in order to deal with a crisis. And a lot of times, because a lot of females, when they get put under pressure, they get emotional. Their emotions wind up making them lose control over themselves, and they wind up, shutting down, denying problems, and then abandoning the situation. And this is what we're seeing in Seattle right now as related to the Chaz or CHOP empowerment zone that these protesters have set up. These protesters were able to set that up because this female mayor of Seattle, this female police commissioner, they were not out, they did not have the life skills that men have in order to deal with crises, and they didn't have the life skills in order to deal with an out of control situation. Now, many male leaders who have fathers in their lives, they know how to deal with these type of situations because they understand things like structure, they understand things like order, and that's what we're seeing the mayor of Portland participate in when these protesters went out here and established their Chaz/CHOP empowerment zone in that city. Now, that mayor quickly took authority in the situation. He acknowledged the problems, and he set a logical course in order to solve the problems. And he didn't get in his feelings because he understood that long term that he had to maintain order in his city. And if he allowed these protesters to establish this Chaz/CHOP empowerment zone in his city, what they would do is create chaos that would keep the city from being able to function and the citizens in order to be safe in that city. So that mayor quickly dispatched the police to those blocks of city that these protesters wanted to take over, and he quickly had his police officers shut down this effort to create a Chaz/CHOP empowerment zone in that part of his city, because he understood that if these protesters took over a part of his city, he would not be able to have order in that part of the city. Moreover, those residents of that part of the city would be held hostage, and their lives would be put at risk, as similar to many of those residents of Seattle in that Chaz/CHOP empowerment zone, who cannot get any sort of law enforcement to deal with criminal matters or possible violent actions of the Chaz/CHOP empowerment zone individuals who have taken over parts of that area and are looking to shake down neighborhood residents and businesses and destroy the quality of life and the safety of those individuals. The mayor of Portland did not want that situation to deteriorate, so he quickly shut down those protesters' efforts to try to take over a part of the city, because he understood there is a boundary for your citizens to be out here as related to their rights and their freedoms, and he understood that while under our United States Constitution, you have a right to protest your government, you do not have a right to take over a part of the city in an effort to hold people hostage. And that's what those protesters, they don't understand, because they don't understand boundaries, and they don't understand boundaries primarily because most of those Chaz/Chop empowerment zone protesters primarily, I believe, came mostly from these single mother households, or they came from households with beta male fathers. And because they came from those two environments, they pushed past the boundaries of that Seattle block of Capitol Hill, and they wound up going out here and taking it over because, one, you had a female leader who shut down and allowed this, and you had these betas who were out here looking to again challenge the authority of the executive branch of Seattle. Now, the executive branch, again, its main function is to enforce the law, and its main focus is to make sure that the residents of a city are safe. And your female mayor of Seattle, she has completely failed in relation to those 6 blocks of Capitol Hill in keeping those residents safe from, as I see it, these invaders who have violated our United States Constitution and have decided to go out here and terrorize those residents of Seattle by holding them hostage in their own area. Now, I look at them, again, setting up borders and setting up their own space, and again, that's not what a protest is all about. A protest is where while you disagree with the government, you still want to participate in the government. You don't want to separate from the government. No, what you want to do is say, okay, I have an issue with the way police are treating black men, and I want you to do something as related to it. You're still a part of the government. You're still participating in the political process, and you're still out here trying to get change from a system. It's not that you go out here and leave the system. It's you're going to go and be a part of that system that you say you have a disagreement with. And that's where the Chaz, again, /Chop individuals, their whole argument falls completely apart as related to this empowerment zone. They sit there and say, again, that they are protesting the murder of George Floyd, but they're not following the laws of this land that they say that they have an issue with. If you're going to have a protest, again, you are going to participate in the government, not go out here and revolt against it the way these Chaz/Chop types have. And you're not going to try to make demands of the residents of that area, trying to get them involved in your matters. You're going to take those matters in your own hands. But again, as I said before, this is shows you the clear difference between male leadership and female leadership, and it shows us that while we have injustices as related to the murder of George Floyd, the man crisis looms in these protests, and we see the dysfunction as related to the man crisis in these protests as related to Chaz and Chop, and we see how the failure of female leadership has led to the complete deterioration of order in Seattle, because these two female leaders, when put in charge of that area in Seattle, they did not go out here and assert authority over those protesters. They did not set boundaries for those protesters, and they did not make an effort to maintain order. No, what they did was shut down like a single mother, deny that there was a problem, and then abandon those residents in that area and leave them at the mercy of these predators who were posing as protesters. This is what happens in homes all across the country, and we're seeing this scaled up in Seattle right now. And again, it shows me how deep the man crisis goes in this country and how it has an impact on things like a political protest, because we're seeing right now in Seattle, again, what happens when you have female leadership and no ability to understand how to navigate and build and maintain structures of order. And we see with Portland, in contrast, what happens when you have a strong male leader asserting his authority, asserting his order, and making sure that all of the residents are safe, because he understands things like the big picture, because he's looking at the picture logically and not looking at it emotionally and looking to please those based on their feelings. And what he wants to do is, again, think about all of the residents, not just the ones who are upset, because when females are emotional, all they want to do is please the son who's out of control and give him what he wants. But sometimes a boy needs to know where the boundaries are, and these protesters need to know where the boundaries are as related to protest, because we are a nation of laws, and if our protesters can't follow the laws, that's when their protests turn into efforts to try to turn against the government they say they have something against. If you want to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. And if you want to learn more about the dysfunctional behaviors of single mothers and beta males, you can pick up my book, The Man Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle formats. You can also find it on Smashwords, the iBook Store, and Google Play. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.
Now available in paperback and e-readers, Spellbound, A Darker Shade of Black. Get your copy today at your favorite online bookseller.